Hi, I'm Matt Bacon, and this is my point 4 cents.
Hi, I'm Jesse Cannon.
I'm Andrew Southworth.
And I'm Dustin Boyer.
This week, I'm excited to interview upcoming country music artist Brian Andrews, who has been absolutely crushing it on TikTok and Instagram. He reveals his content approach and how he maintains such a sustainable push around his career.
On today's episode, we're talking about how Spotify can get manipulated by tagging artist profiles with scammers' profiles. Then at the end, we'll be talking about how often you should be posting on social media. So Cameron, aka Venus Theory, uploaded this awesome video, "It's Not Just You, Music Streaming is Broken Now." And he's had some takes on music streaming and the music industry before that were very cynical. I think the last time I talked to him, he mentioned the first way he started his sentence was, "We're all going to die someday." And that was how he started his argument. But he goes through a lot of interesting points in this video, such as how anyone can upload music to anyone's profile. Anyone can tag famous artists in their songs. People can get an AI generated track and push it to your page. And you can target people with bots and get their music pulled if you really hate them. And there's all these other nuanced things that he talks about in this video. Basically, it's like, here's all the messed up things with music streaming. So a lot of y'all have probably seen this, so we're going to talk about it today.
And what I think is really interesting is he doesn't even go into some of the more upfront, terrible use cases I see every day.
Like
the one that strikes me that I always think is weird is that I can run an ad using anyone on YouTube's video posing as them, right? So it's like if I wanted to go and put $100 behind a Jesse Muse Formation video, I can just do that. And there's no way for Jesse to approve or deny me doing that. And I've seen people use that to malicious ends because they're running a video towards someone who they know will hate it, so it gets hate comments. They're running a video against a place where they know there's lots of bots, so then it gets nailed for bots, whatever. I don't know. The situation is really bad. And really what Cameron talks about in his video is, you would think that in a world where there's two-factor authentication for fucking everything, that there'd be two-factor authentication to upload your song on the same page as an artist who's got millions of Spotify monthlies.
Fuck two-factor authentication. What about any authentication?
It's
Two-factor
authentication.
Let's use the right word here. There's no consent. It is like artist page. Artist page rape, basically.
This is how I see it. It's like somebody coming in to my office, walking in, putting a poster up and being like, "That's there now." And I'm like, "All right, can I take it down?" They're like, "Yes, but you'll have to go downtown to a government building and ask them for you to be able to take it down." It's just, it's insane. YouTube, right? We're on a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can just upload to a YouTube channel, but anybody can upload to your Spotify channel. And it seems like the only barrier that they consistently had in the past, because this has always been an issue, was that making music is hard. And so there's no real advantage. It takes too much time. What's the point? But now that music can just be made instantly and there's a huge advantage, and it's easy, then anybody can just do it. And then therefore they do.
I was hired to run ads for this label, and we did that. They had these playlists they wanted us to promote. And then I noticed one day in my Spotify for Artists account that I had access to big artists like Machine Gun Kelly and Sublime and Tupac. And I was like, why do I have access to these huge artists in Spotify for Artists all of a sudden? Turns out what this artist/label was doing is they would upload their songs, tagging artists such as Tupac, Machine Gun Kelly, and get an initial huge burst of streams. By the time anyone took it down, they didn't care. They got like 500,000 streams.
Yep.
And that was like their marketing plan, which I'm pretty sure is not allowed and it's probably illegal, but it's so hard to do anything with that, especially if it's international, right? So that's a huge, Machine Gun Kelly, Tupac. Tupac's not even alive.
You're actually getting to the number one place this happens. So, for example, I am a massive fan of Sophie. I have a tattoo of Sophie, and I get, because I've engaged with her music so much and she's been dead for 4 years, all I get is Sophie has posted a new track fucking constantly. And like the Reddit is always just so pissed that the family does nothing with this, because there is this disambiguation tool that you can use, but no one is aware of it.
Can you explain what that is real quick for people?
So disambiguation tool in most distributors is a way of saying, that is not me. You can now throw that on another Sophie page if your name is Sophie, since international laws make it so that artists can have the same names. There's plenty of artists out here in the world that have had the same name, but one has been UK. There's been many jokes made about this, about how many bands are UK version of this. And what it basically does is it kicks them off your page and makes them onto a separate page.
There's also for some artists will have like a verification system, which I've had run into with a few people I know, where they go to do a collab with someone and then the distributor says, we either need that artist to DM the official DistroKid account verifying that that's that, or email us with like their verification ID, whatever. So there is a way to put in like a check, but that's not something any artist can do. That's something like a certain size artist would figure out with their distributor or whatever.
And that's sort of the question, is why is it that these tools are only accessible? And I mean that from like a practical standpoint, because there seems to be, like all things, money involved in making these decisions. But why is it that people can own their YouTube channels, artists can own their YouTube channels, sort of, right? And they can say what's put on there, but yet when it comes to Spotify, that's not the case, or any of these other DSPs.
The point being, it ties into this like really insane thing I said on the podcast a few weeks ago that shouldn't be true, but is. But there's like a huge argument to be made that a big part of the value of signing to a label is literally just now you have customer support on your distribution and on a lot of other things. But the big one is like, hey, if you're an artist with, a couple 100,000 Spotify monthlies, so you're making like big boy money on that streaming, a lot of people are in that position where they don't have customer service at all. Like, even if you're getting 300,000 Spotify monthlies, but you're on DistroKid,
Yeah.
Yeah, whether
I
it's
don't
a
know.
label or it's like a distribution deal, like that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Even working
Yeah,
with
yeah,
someone
yeah.
like The Orchard or
United
Symphonics,
Masters.
like whatever tier that they
Yeah,
take
yeah,
a
yeah.
cut, but you get a rep and you get to communicate and they might even do some pitching. But if it's just like hey, maybe instead of pulling down my album when Spotify flags it, maybe just fine me the $10, right? Because DistroKid will just yank it. Symphonic will just fine you. And if you're making thousands of dollars a month, you'd rather just take the L with the $10. Neither should happen, but if you're going to choose one, you would choose the $10 fine, you know?
But this seems like the easiest tech to build in the world, and yet Spotify is busy, according to many reports we've read, is accidentally having 3 teams building the same exact product at once, because they're so badly
Yeah.
managed over there.
Is this managed better on Apple Music, Deezer, any other platform? Do they deal with these same situations?
The same thing happens. I don't know exactly the rate, but I've seen mismatches happen both on purpose and by accident on Apple. And Apple does have like a very convenient form where if you go through Apple Music for Artists, there's like a, enter the song that's wrong, enter the correct profile it should be, and enter the profile it's on, and then you submit it, and within like a week it's fixed. But the fact that that tool exists tells you how common it must be, right?
Well, and it just seems like a byproduct. I mean, like most of Spotify's decision of just dominating the market, right? They own the market for the most part. I mean, even as music marketers, we always put Spotify at the forefront of everything that we do because the industry cares about it. Fans care about it. And so what incentivizes them to even bother? I mean, let's be real. Majority of the reason people subscribe is to listen to Taylor Swift, not listen to Venus Theory. No offense, but it's true. I think independent artists just have no leverage on that platform. Even when they talk about boycotting, and we talked about this a couple months ago, where it's like, okay, a bunch of small artists, like even mid-level artists, boycott. What's it going to change? So, it feels so hopeless. I recognize his sentiment at the end where it's such a desperate thing of like, this sucks because we're getting taken advantage of.
But I wonder, is the onus of this part of it we're discussing not on the distributors to be more. I mean, it actually does seem in some ways like they should be the ones, since technically your distributor is always your interface with Spotify, aside from when you're
Yeah.
in Spotify for Artists back end. Like, I do wonder what that is, and one of the things I think about all the time, especially like I told you guys at the start of this, like the reason I'm in a different background today is I can't get Verizon to restore my Wi-Fi in one of the most populated city in America after a week, and because every corporation now knows customer service is where they bleed profits, and all these distributors have decided we don't need customer service.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it should be with the distributors because that is the interface point for artists. And I don't even think it has to be some fancy pants solution. Like ideally, it would be some type of mutually agreed upon login verification ID system. That way, like you could have every person to upload has to like prove their identity, so they're not like a scammer, and then also they can tag the artists that they actually own, or the individual like IDs and the platforms that they're allowed to distribute to. It could be as simple as the distributor does some type of like manual check the first time you sign up. Again, that comes back to the customer support problem. But like
Why isn't this just like a friend request on Facebook?
I see, to
Yes.
me,
That's
I don't
like,
even think you need the distributor though. Like what I don't understand is right now I can get on Spotify for Artists and I can
Mhm.
change elements to my profile, right? I have access, limited access to my profile right now. So why is it that I'm already verified as the person who owns that profile? Nobody else can own it. Why isn't that I can't reorder my song, say, "Hey, I'm submitting this because this should not belong here," even if it has to bounce back to the distro? See, that's what I don't understand is that like we already have access to it. So I get it that like whose responsibility is it? But let's be real, the easiest solution is to just give artists that access in Spotify for Artists. I
yeah.
mean, hell, you just said Apple Music does the same thing. They go to the Apple for music or for artists, and there's a forum on the back end.
and actually that's a so when you get access to Spotify artists, there's two ways to do it. One is through S4A and another one is through your distributor. And when you do it through your distributor, you actually link your distributor to your Spotify account with their API. So they can check who gets the access. And then that could perhaps just be the solution that they use to bake in that extra permission. Like to be allowed to distribute to a certain Spotify account, maybe you have to link the Spotify account that has the S4A access to distribute to that in the first place. And that's the solution.
Point being, this does not need to be that complicated. Another thing I thought was really interesting in that video that I'd never thought of before because I'm not really in this world is the way that people are just like posting samples to content ID you or to tag you for
Oh,
content
straight
ID fraud.
scamming. Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's real aggravating because it's not like the people who are publishing samples are doing anything wrong. They're just trying to create like the cool like bones of a song,
Uh,
and yet here we are.
I will tell you an even more dystopian thing from that, which is a band that recorded at my recording studio teased their song. Somebody went in, took the fucking tease, and then they couldn't release it because they were trying to go through DistroKid. And I had to help them get a better distributor to get the song released because they couldn't even get the fucking thing released because they got content ID'd through DistroKid.
Through the T's.
Unbelievable.
I mean,
Yeah.
look, if there's a way to scam it, people will, and especially artists. Artists, whether you scam them from their dream, you sell them their dream, or just, I mean, it is so easy to scam artists because genuinely there's so many of them and nobody gives a shit about them. I mean, I can tell you that this whole segment, the waters that I swim in Nashville, the deep waters, they would listen to this and yawn because not their problem. Their problems, like the people who are making majority of the money in the music industry, are not concerned about the plight of anybody who has under 50,000 monthly listeners. And if they are concerned about those things, they have relationships with their own distros that they can work around it. So at the end of the day, that's really the issue. Like, why should Spotify even spend any money on getting their back end platform more accessible to artists when it makes them zero more dollars? Unless all of us complain ad nauseum, because pooling your music is not going to work. But artists talking about it and fans knowing it and hating Spotify more and more, I think that will start to have an effect.
Yep.
But
Eventually,
I
at
mean,
least.
will it? People have been making fun of Walmart my entire life and
Well, I mean,
saying how toxic it
Spotify just
is.
launched their like lossless thing for free to premium users instead of putting it in this like high, and I don't know. My gut reaction when I saw that was like this was Spotify trying to like buy some goodwill
Yeah, I
because of
read
the
that too.
waves of
Uh,
negative press that have happened.
It's so that free listeners can now choose what they listen to. It's the same thing as when Meta became Meta from Facebook, right when the Facebook papers came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and I also so like there was kind of a funny or not funny, but there was someone posted on Threads this week. I think around the Venus theory thing, like the My Point 4 cents guys came down saying you should still be on Spotify the other day. Are they still going to say that? And to me, it still remains a question of like the market is the market is the market, and if the place of consumption is Spotify, then you don't get a lot of choices. Which which I'm not like stoked about. Like I'm not trying to be like, oh, this is great, but I just also like don't there like isn't another solution. And
That
ultimately
says
any
nothing will
other
ever change, nothing ever happens, we're all doomed.
If you
well,
look
what
at
I
the
was gonna
user
say,
counts
Sorry,
though,
Matt. I'm sorry. That was rude.
it's like pretty dominant. Like if you add up YouTube
yeah,
Music, Apple Music, and Amazon Music, it's about equal to just Spotify's premium, not even their whole user base. Like it's dominant.
But I think the thing that also people forget is that there's so many subscriptions people don't use. Apple makes it so easy to subscribe. And really, when you look at the artist royalty sheets and the streaming sheets, that's where you really see the dominance of Spotify and YouTube.
yeah. For me, it's always funny to me when I get the Apple will send you like a weekly report of how your artist streamed, and when I look at those numbers versus what the artist did on Spotify that week, it's always like, oh, sweetheart.
I always assume it's 1/10 as an average. Like your Apple numbers for most people will be
And
1/10 of your Spotify numbers.
I think that might even be a little generous.
Some cases it is.
Like, I'm just saying, so yeah. So I guess just to me, it's like, I just think this is what it is. I think other platforms can come in. I sometimes wonder about the long-term health of Spotify versus like an Apple Music, because Apple Music isn't like actually selling music. They're selling iPhones. Right. So like it doesn't matter if they lose money. The way it matters is Spotify loses money. And so Spotify has to do all this other stuff to try to break even, like audiobooks and podcasts and whatever. Right. So they kind of have to decreasingly be a music company, whereas Apple Music kind of can keep being a music company because they don't sell music. They sell iPhones.
I
Same for
will say
YouTube, same
this,
for Amazon. It's
that
just like a side business.
Yeah.
yeah, but I do think that we underestimate the importance of the gamification for Spotify. I think the
Oh,
reason
yeah.
that they don't get rid of the numbers is because they know there is millions of artists every day gamifying Spotify and promoting Spotify. That's really at the core of why, in my opinion, they've been so successful. So what? Taylor Swift's on every platform. Why is it that somebody's choosing Spotify over everything else? It's because every independent artist out there is pushing Spotify first. So when it feels depressing, like why would they care about what indie artists think? Well, when indie artists start saying, "Hey, just go to Bandcamp. Hey, just I'll sell you it directly. Go to my fan club." When they start choosing alternative paths, then I do think it will affect the overall marketing of Spotify.
But like, will it? Because ultimately, couple things.
We're all doomed.
Ultimately, we're all doomed. We're all going to die.
We're all gonna die.
Beyond that, ultimately, the Spotify monthly listeners number is like one of the 3 core metrics that really dictates the opportunities you get. And it's one of the most publicly facing ones, right? And it's also the one that requires the least amount of thought, right? Like I would argue that like Instagram engagement, not follows, is almost, if not just as important as Spotify monthlies. But that requires a modicum of work to see what the engagement is on an artist rather than looking at their Spotify for artists, right? And we have all had conversations talking about tours where one of the first numbers that came up when considering an artist for a tour was their Spotify monthly number. But the crazy thing is, just to build on what you were saying, Dustin, is so people understand the Spotify monthly number is what matters. So they are spending their own money on Spotify, furthering the market dominance. And the other thing is that because all the other platforms are so much smaller, Apple can't put their Apple monthly listeners, because if you saw that an artist had a million Spotify monthlies and 50,000 Apple monthlies or 100,000 Apple monthlies, they'd be like, oh, we look pathetic now. So it's like the Spotify monthly listener number is able to kind of hold people in like a cobra grip, but also like I think it's genuinely like a pretty goddamn helpful metric. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't.
it is insurmountable in terms of like how do you shift an industry away from this metric. And I will say that when it comes to like what promoters seem to care about more and more is social presence over Spotify, when it really used to be more focused on Spotify, but they're not seeing the translation. I don't know, man. I mean, I think that at some point enough people are going to talk about it, but maybe not. Maybe it will never be enough.
Yeah, I think the artists that have like 100 monthly listeners or even like 10,000, it's not going to do anything. Even if like 50% of them did it. It has to be those like 50,000 plus, 100,000 plus. Like we talked about Kara last week, I think, or whatever.
Yep.
Her pulling her music, like she has had like 1 million monthly listeners or something. So as an independent artist that actually like does something, like her pulling her music represents, for example, might be 1,000 indie artists pulling their music. So enough cars of the world do something and take a stance on it, it might actually cause Spotify to do something. But if like, random guy on Threads that's like, oh, I have 7 monthly listeners, go buy my stuff on Bandcamp, that's not doing anything to push Spotify.
But it's also a impossible bargain for, many independent artists I know who have built themselves up to 100,000 Spotify monthlies. That's like about $1,000 a month, generally speaking. That's a lot of people's rent, right? It's like that's how they're paying their bills. It's like they know fairly consistently Spotify will write me a check for this amount of money every month. I can take that money and pay my bills. And when you're an artist where like having your rent covered is really important because that allows you to do other interesting things, which I would argue is the bulk of professional original musicians. I don't fucking know. It's really hard to tell that person like Spotify is bad. Give up. If
See,
look, if
but I
you're
don't think it's going to take taking the music down. I think it's just going to take the industry shifting on what do they market first. I really think that you don't need to take your music down. You just need to say, "Hey, everybody, go listen on Apple Music. Hey, everybody, go buy it first." Like where you send people first will have an impact. And if people get tired of it, and see, I think it has to happen organically. I don't think there's like a campaign that somebody can run and be like, "Hey, let's do it, guys." Like, I think it's just the tides turning. The artists are fed up with it, and they're like, "You know what, Spotify, if you're not going to fix this, I'm individually, I'm done." And enough of that happens. Cool, I'm on Spotify, sure, whatever, but I'm pushing this over here.
I'll piggyback on that is that if you think of it this way, what Spotify came to prominence of is this was a better, more convenient way than torrents that offered people an easier way to do things. When you offer artists finally a better incentivized system, which I think that's what the subverts the untitles and the evens are trying to build, whether they'll do it successfully, when that actually occurs, when somebody builds a better product, and it will happen at some point, then we will see a very big tide turn, and Spotify is going to have to
yeah.
do a lot of hand wringing.
Today, I'm interviewing Brian Andrews. He's an up-and-coming country artist. Some of you may know him as a country artist. Some of you may know him as a political influencer. I think he would prefer you know him as both, but we'll get into that. But first, before we start, because there's so much to unpack about how you've been able to accomplish what you have had as a DIY artist, I want to just let the audience know who you are. I know you've been releasing a lot of music lately, so give us a little background. Who are you? What are you doing? What are you releasing?
Yeah, I'm Brian Andrews. From a real small town in the state of Missouri, and I'm pretty vocal about shit. I think, how, how I was raised, it was just, you stand up for what you believe in, and I think that's something that I've always wanted to carry over into, my platforms and everything like that. So that's pretty much what my platforms consist of, not just the music, but me as a person. And, I just signed a deal. So we're putting out a lot of music, been writing a lot of music, and I'm super pumped for it. I think it's some of the best music I've ever written in my life. So pretty jacked.
Well, and when I first discovered you, it was the political content, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm a pretty political, not publicly, but I'm a politically driven person. That sort of content really resonates with me, and a lot of what you spoke on grabbed me right away. And I think we live in this world where we suspect somebody on either side of the spectrum to look one way. And arguably, you are on the left side of the spectrum, but you look and sound like you should be on the right. And I think that one, that grabs people, right? Because it's unexpected. But two, there are a lot of people like you who live in rural places who don't want to speak up. And when they hear you speaking up, it gives them somebody to gravitate towards. So I'm sort of curious, because I was introduced that way, but do you feel like you really started in that world, that is where you first started getting attention?
I mean, I've been in music for 5 years now, and when I first started, the music definitely took off, but it was always like my personal life content always played a huge role in, my music and everything else. Up until the TikTok ban, that's when I started getting really vocal about, things that I was seeing, and I've always leaned left my whole life. Both my parents are left leaning, and I'm not ashamed to say that. I mean, I think that it's like just the social norm that, you're considered conservative, or have conservative viewpoints in country music as a person or a, you know, figure or even an artist. And when I started seeing so many things that I did not agree with, I thought to me it was too much to stay quiet. And it is a big part of who I am and the way my brain works. So I figured I'd start talking about it, and I don't have any regrets whatsoever.
And that, dude, that's so awesome to hear. And, now that I think back a little bit, I remember so much of your content being around your music initially. And so that's where you really started. And then being triggered by more political stuff, you've decided to speak up about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I always felt like I said, I always felt like my personality showed in my content and stuff like that. But, in the times we do live in, I feel like it's necessary to be able to speak out about things that you see in the world and things that you believe, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. But yeah, I mean, as far as like, do I think it gravitated or do I think it kind of exploded when I started doing that? Absolutely. I mean, I had 2.1 million followers up until in 4 years, up until January of this year. And now I have 3.1, about to hit 3.2.
That's crazy. So the controversy of it.
Yeah.
If I was working with you, you'd be a dream artist, because I think the most difficult thing for artists to really gravitate towards is like making content around the music is kind of easy. It's compartmentalized. Expressing your personality is difficult, not only because you have to uncover who is this person, but also how am I going to express it? Combining those two things together for any artist is nearly impossible. And I think that watching your content, you are always the example I point towards where like I sometimes don't know how you do it so effortlessly. And sometimes your content is about one or the other, but sometimes you beautifully intertwine them where you can see the people on or enjoying both of these things. And I'm just like, holy cow, like how is this guy weaving this together? So explain to me, like, you're posting content about your music. There was so much personality, but do you struggle with trying to combine those two things together?
I think sometimes you probably, with certain songs and stuff like that, it's a little bit hard to do like figure out how to blend the rant style stuff or like even the skit style stuff into the music and make it make sense in a meaningful way. But for me, it's become easier and easier because I write songs about the things that I see. So, when I'm writing, I'm thinking about how I'm going to address this or how I'm going to market this, or how I'm gonna talk about this in a meaningful way, And I think, like, I don't know for sure, but I mean, I think that, like, the things I say come across meaningful just because, like, of the way I'm able to craft the conversation. But when I think about that, I don't think it's all that difficult, because I've been that way my whole life, and I'm a very intense person. I feel things deeply, no matter what emotion it is. But I think, like, content has been able to teach me how to take a step back from things when they initially happen, and then learn how to craft what I want to say in a way that it will be received well. And so when I think about doing that, it's just effortless to be able to mesh the music in it, I think. I don't know. I mean, especially with this new song we're about to put out, because I wrote it about what I see in the world. Even with Blue, like the first single we released with the label, I loved the song so much, and I had such a deep, connection to it, that I knew that if I figured out a way to get it out there, that people would feel the same way.
Well, and that passion is so interesting too, man, because, you did a post the other day about the Supreme Court ruling, and you start your videos, and I think this is always so important. You've not trademarked, but you've become known for a way of flipping your camera forward and going like, "Ho ho," like, and then it grabs you, and I don't know if what rain I'm gonna get. I don't know if I was gonna get a political thing, but sometimes, the song about your ex-girlfriend, right?
Mhm.
What was the name of that
Yeah.
song?
Blue. Yeah.
Blue. That is Blue. Okay, right? You flip the camera and you start talking shit about your ex, and then I don't even know it's about a song. And the way that you don't know what you're gonna get, but the level of energy is the same, feels like we're having the same conversation. And as a marketer, I sort of took notes on that, because in a way, you're creating this consistency in your brand, and I'm enjoying you. I actually kind of
Right.
don't care what you're saying. Like, it's becoming you, the storyteller. And so I think as artists, sometimes we try to compartmentalize all these like content strategies, but ultimately they can be built the same way. The
Yes.
story changes, but you haven't changed.
Yeah, I always say they go hand in hand. I mean, like, I hate to be one of those, because you hear fucking pretentious artists say it all the time, where they're like, "I'm not a content creator, I'm just an artist." But when I write songs, I think about the content I could be making about it. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's because, like, I think I
And
grew up in
dude,
a
and
different
so many
era.
artists would hate to hear that.
Yeah, and I
They're like,
mean,
"Oh," but
yeah.
I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, it doesn't take away from the art, because I'm writing the song about something I truly feel. And there's no way that I could create content about something that I don't believe in anyways. So, what are we talking
Man,
about?
yeah. Well, and I think about it like, even this, like you think about what the content I'm gonna make, right? What am I gonna say? But you could say the same thing as like, what am I gonna talk about in this song? Somebody asks me about this song, what am I gonna say? And when you think about it that way, you put yourself out of this headspace of like, I'm creating content, and more just, I want to talk about my song.
Yeah, dude, it's
Um,
like I never view it as just making content. It's always like, I'm about to say something that I fucking believe in, and I need to say it to be able to sleep at night.
yeah. That's well, and let me ask you though, does any of your music in that regard lean political as well?
Absolutely. This song we're about to put out, there is no ifs, ands, or buts. It is 100% political, and I'm absolutely so fucking tired of hearing people tell me to shut up and sing, because music has always been political.
Bob Dylan never sang about politics. What are you talking
Yeah,
about, bro?
yeah. I mean, it's one of them things that, to me, it's like, for a long time I didn't talk about politics, because you just don't. And I mean, even in the wake of things that we've seen on a large scale, how many artists have you really seen talk about it? Not very many. Some, a couple. They might have shared an Instagram post,
Especially
which
in
is better than
country.
nothing. But
Well, and I'll tell you too, with country, there's already fans have so many opinions just about the genre. So many will be like, do real country. And then when you do real country, they're like, you don't do it as good as blah blah blah. Like, and so as soon as you dip into politics, it's just the things that people have to say are just insane.
yeah, it's opinionated, because country music represents the people who have been middle of the road their whole life. The simple people that are living in the flyover states and stuff like that. Country music represents those people. So country music, to me, has always been political. because it's represented the people who ultimately elect people in this country or make policy changes in this country.
Do you ever feel like because your music politically misaligns with what most people would traditionally, and again, I think that there is a huge hidden segment of people who share your political beliefs and love country music,
Yes.
but do you feel like you have a ceiling because of that?
Nope, not even a little bit. Because I think that the way genres are moving, for one, country is the new pop. It's one of the largest genres in the world right now, and it's become mainstream. And I think that it is listened to by maybe not the largest, but damn near the largest audience that of music listeners in general nowadays, in the way that country music has sounded in the last, 10, 15 years and stuff like that anyways. So to me, I think that, like, obviously every song I put out is not gonna be political, but for me as an artist, bending genres too, because I don't make just country music. I make a lot of rock music, and alternative music sometimes.
Mhm.
And so, like, the way those boxes are kind of fading, so is I mean, you can say that political ideology is getting just further and further divided, and I would probably agree with you, but the people that are left in the middle are getting left behind. Those people still need a voice, and I can always, to me, it's all these issues have nuance, and it's never just black and white like we're told it is. You know what I'm saying? So when I do make a song like this, I always try to base my arguments or feelings even in the way I craft the things I say in humanity, because that's the side I want to be on. Whatever's best for humanity itself and all human beings, not just some.
In the wake of what happened this week, and granted, people are probably watching this, later on, but we're talking about the Charlie Kirk situation where I think you have a lot of people in the middle finally being like, just stop. Like both the rhetoric on both sides. And I'm not talking about like the middle rhetoric. I'm talking about like the blaming on either side because it literally all it does is divide us more. And, I think you and I had a conversation over text a few days ago and you made a post about this whole situation. And I just, as somebody, because there's other artists who do political content, political music, does this situation reinforce your ideals and really your wantingness to speak up about it? Or do you feel like maybe I'm doing the wrong thing here?
I think for me, I have had to take a step back and evaluate, like, just how I view the world because, I knew it was divided and I knew the world was ugly, but I didn't quite, like, that was obviously a realization moment of how ugly it really is out here. And it's started the conversation of, the violence that we see in America on a daily basis pretty much. And so for me, it's like I don't think that for me personally, when I was thinking about like the things I say and how outspoken I am, I was like, damn, is this worth it? But I think to me it is. I was having a conversation with my dad, and I'm gonna make a video about this later, but I was like, maybe I should just shut the fuck up and just post songs and that's it. Because is it worth it? And he was like, well, would you rather not make it because you tucked your tail in the face of hate and just started posting about music and let go of a huge part of who you are? Or would you rather not make it because you said something that people just weren't ready to hear yet? And I chose the latter. And I will always choose the latter because you will never, ever be able to turn me into the hate that you give.
Dude, I love that. And yeah, I think that I mean, now there's a true bravery in anybody having opinions, right? Like when influencers and free speech are attacked, perceivably, we're still finding out. But, there's no other reason to attack Charlie Kirk unless you had something to, thoughts on what he had to say. But I think, I've had conversations with other influencers who speak on politics, and it's like, do I do I keep going? Is this worth it? And I don't know. I agree with you. It's like, and if you give up on it, what's the point? Then
Yeah.
what? Then we don't live in a society where that's valued.
Like I said, I think that, the original question you asked was, does it make me feel like I'm wrong? You know, um, being on the left side of things in the wake of what's happened. And no, I don't. I think that because I don't feel I'm not a radical leftist or whatever that they're telling you to hate. Like my best friends in the world that I grew up with, that I watched their families grow, are Republicans. And I see them every day. I drink beer with them every weekend. So for me, when I'm thinking about the things that I want to say, like I said, I always try to end up on the side of human empathy and just being able to see things for what they are. And if it hurts people, if policy, whatever it is you're talking about, if it hurts people, then I will always speak out against it. And that's where I don't necessarily view myself as a Democrat. I just view myself as someone who's got the platform and is able to say things to multiple people at a time that I think are wrong.
The way you phrase it sometimes, like the Supreme Court stuff, and it's like, okay, so cool. We're just going to look at people and decide whether they're guilty or not by looking at them, right? Like there's a humanity side to this conversation that if you stop framing it as Democrat versus Republican, that it does resonate. It resonates with me when you speak on a humanity level.
Yeah, and I think like the whole thing is about it is like, dude, I'm not looking at the far right and in these videos, I'm not looking at them and saying these people are Nazis or, these people are just whatever, this hateful rhetoric that they say we say all the time. I'm not saying that. I look at specific things, specific situations with nuance and say that is wrong if I believe that it is wrong. Because if it hurts people in an inhumane way, I don't know how you can be on the side because you align with it politically. That's what I'm saying. I hate this that we have labeled ourselves into two different parties all the time because, or policy by policy, we can look at things with nuance and say, hey, this is fucked up, like gun violence. Like I've said this a million fucking times. I'm an avid owner. I've owned them my whole life or been around them since I was literally born. They have been in my house every day. Every day. And if you think that I wouldn't go through some kind of extensive background check or that we could have certain classes for certain level of weapons or something like that, if you think I wouldn't agree with that, you're fucking crazy. I would do that shit in a heartbeat if it meant we did anything to stop kids from getting killed in their fucking classrooms.
Well, and even going back to just being a human being, the whole point of R versus D is that you're okay with hurting that person. That you're creating a divide where you're like, it's not okay to hurt my people. It's okay to hurt your people. And when policy becomes that, then what are we doing? Instead of just pointing at like, we're all humans. What is good for you is good for me. And to be transparent, it seems many people in power want that because it keeps them in power. No matter who's in power, that fear and that punishment of the other side is the point. And so the fact that you approach it with the mentality of like, is this right or wrong? Like it's as simple as
Right.
that is
Yeah, and I
fantastic.
mean, it's no different than like when I think about what's happened recently, and I see a lot of people on the left, and they'll say, it doesn't matter the situation we're talking about. A lot of times they'll be like, yeah, but they wouldn't have the same empathy towards you. But my argument to that is, I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
That's the difference between me
Are
and
we gonna
them.
break the cycle or are we just gonna do the same thing that
Yes.
they're doing?
Like, what the fuck
Yeah.
are we talking about? We have to start being the light we want to see in the world, or else it's a fucking constant contagion of we're against each other. And that's what I was mourning most for. I disagreed with Charlie Kirk on vehemently pretty much on every topic other than his faith. But I still mourn for the state of the country. I still mourn that a life was taken. I still mourn that children will grow up without a father. I would never wish orphanage on anyone. So, and I mean, I've been called out by the left this week for making that video. And I understand where people are coming from when they say things like they wouldn't have cared the same. Look at them now. They're calling for war on the left. Or when you see people of color say things like this has been happening to us since its country's inception. I get it. And I don't know what to say to that, to be honest with you. And I'm not going to tell anyone else how to feel. I just know that me personally, will always have empathy for any human being.
Yeah, man. The mourning of the fact that we know agents of power are going to use it to their advantage, I think that I'm with you on that, where it's like this martyrdom is only going to further the thing that I think most of us in the middle are most upset about, which is the divide. It's like
Yeah.
that really, I felt this way when the assassination attempt on Trump. It's like fantastic, more divide, because that's all these situations create. And what upsets me most is that there are people like that we know personally. I mean, I live in the South as well, that are bought in. They think that, I'm like, man, this is what they want from you. They want you to blame this other person. And I'm on the other side. So am I to blame? Well, no, you're my brother, you're my friend, you're whatever. And it's
Right.
like, well, so where's, you got to recognize what you're doing. But some people, they've got a lot of people in the propaganda machine, and there's just not a lot you can do about it. And it just further divides it.
Yeah, and that's where I'm saying, like, I can't speak to other people's experience. I think we're all knowing of things that are online and stuff like that, and like I said, these groups of people who have been affected by rhetoric from people on the right side, I get why they feel the way they feel, and they've been affected by policy too.
And that's why I think in politics, as a musician, your voice predominantly, I think, will have a major impact in a way that, like, if I was just a rock guy and I was left leaning and I'm in an echo chamber. You're
Right.
not in an echo chamber.
No.
You're challenging people on the right every day. And your voice in particular, I think, is going to have a lot of value of bringing people on both sides back together, but especially on the right.
I agree. I say that all the time. It's like, in country music specifically, I'm mostly speaking to conservatives and I sing to conservatives. But in my mind, it starts with us if we want this world to be a better place and leave it better for our children. And when I say the things I say them to try to bridge the gap because I want people on that side to say, hey, I don't have to make my whole identity my political party or the person that I voted for. I can look at this with an open mind and say, that's fucked up, and then vote accordingly the next time. Or have someone that you wouldn't normally think of in your mind when you do go to the voting booth. Or look at people a different way and say, you know what? Their experience is their experience, and it's as valid as the experience that I have. Because we are just we are so far divided, and I hate it so much. It honestly breaks my heart. And in that video I posted, that is what I mostly meant, by having empathy for humanity itself. I'm scared of where we're going. Truly terrified, horrified, and I will always condemn acts of violence when I see them against freedom of speech, constitutional rights.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a very amateur interviewer and I don't know how to come back from this conversation.
No,
I don't
it's
know
all
how to bring this back into how do you create a sustainable content strategy?
yeah.
But
No, I didn't mean to
it,
get this
it
off the
I do
rails. It just
well, and honestly, I didn't want to prevent it either because I think that, I mean, look, dude, like artistry, like you said earlier, it melds with humanity and politics, humanity, death, life, violence. How do you have these conversations? I know I made a post today where this girl, she has this song, and the beginning of the song, at least in the part of the content, is I don't want to get shot. She posted that hours before Charlie Kirk was shot. And that
right.
post has gone viral. And it's a political song, and she chose to double down, and I think that's very brave of her because it's going viral and people are paying attention to it, and I think that there's no divorcing it at this point,
No,
and
there is.
even on my end, when I have conversations about artists and what do you do, how do you market, right now, what they're struggling with is, do I even post anything this week, right?
Right.
Like, they're challenged with that, when it has nothing to do with the situation. So how do we can't divorce these things, we can't separate them.
No, we have to stop shying away from them, and I think we have to start having tough conversations. We have to have a conversation about having conversations in places where
Yeah.
normally we wouldn't have them. Even like podcasts or whatever, whoever we're talking to, we have to start normalizing being able to talk to people, even though we have different experiences and differing opinions. As long as we're all trying to move for the betterment of humanity, then I think we can all agree. The problem is that you do have people on both sides that they're so blinded by their hatred that it's hard for them to come back from.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. To me, it's almost like I don't care how much you vilify me, I don't care how much you hate me, I will never ever become the hate you give. And I will always stand strong in the things that I believe in.
Well, and I'm sort of curious what you think of this because I've had artists that they make it a policy, and I respect this. I don't want to talk about politics, whatever way they feel, to the point where I genuinely don't know how they feel. And I think back to this video of Elvis Presley where somebody in the press was asking, was like, "Hey, what do you think of the war?" And she's like, "Ma'am, I just make music. I just entertain. I don't do all that." And I think what I'm curious about from your perspective, for those artists who don't want to participate, do you think that it's a mistake? Do you think that they should be?
I think that if you are not educated, or at least try to educate yourself on things and you want to speak about them, then read first, you know, um, educate yourself and form your own opinion first, and then post about it if you want. But I don't think anybody's inherently making a mistake by not posting about it. I just think at some point, this is our country and this is our world we live in, and we have to start talking about it at some point, no matter who you are. I don't care if you're bagging groceries or a teacher or whatever it is you're doing. I think at some point we've got to start bridging the gap because people are turning to hatred at an alarming rate.
Well, and the unwillingness. I work with almost exclusively country artists, and most of them are right leaning personally, and majority of the reason why they don't want to talk about it is actually because they know they work in a left leaning industry. Everybody here in Nashville that works in music, not everybody, but the people I know, they are actually very left leaning. It's still very much a left leaning industry. So they're always straddling this line of like, I'm talking to my label right now and I want to put content together where I want to say about this, but what if my label drops me? Or worse, doesn't give me the love I deserve because they secretly hate me. So it is both a public game to them, but like internally a political game in the industry.
Yeah, I think so too. I think when I first signed a deal, I was a little bit worried about it, but my label found me that way, on this content that we're talking about, and they have stood behind me 100%. And I mean, I think for me, I'm lucky as an artist because I have that experience with the team I've built around me and am able to have, even with them, meaningful conversations about these things. At business aside, I'm able to relate to them and have conversations with them on a meaningful level to where we believe in what we're trying to do.
Do you feel like that is actually opening more doors than it is closing?
For sure. Absolutely. Like this next song I put out, I think it could be one of the biggest songs of my career, to be honest with you. I just think that, and this is maybe for me on a personal level, but I have to write about these things to be able to shut my eyes and sleep peaceful at night. I have to be able to write about things that I'm this passionate about. And I am passionate about this. I'm passionate about human beings and love and being able to have your own experience, without
Dude,
imposing or being imposed on.
I feel bad for the guy. At some point in your career, some guy who thinks he knows everything is gonna sit you down and be like, "Hey, man, you should really just be this because this is working right now." And that guy's gonna catch an earful from
Wow.
you. And I've been in that room where that guy has made that mistake.
Yeah, dude. I mean, there's nobody that could, because even when I started posting about this song, like, I'm not sure my label thought that I was going to say the things I've been saying, but I didn't ask permission. I just started posting about it and they haven't said a word about it. They just let me be who I want to be in this world. And I think that's where, like, as an artist, the, the best thing that ever happened to me was figuring out that I could be authentic to myself and people would still resonate with me.
That has been the biggest lesson of the last 10 years of my personal career working with artists, where they don't understand how being precious with their own opinions and their own style and taking risks is holding them back. They're micro curating everything. And then the people that are out there, not only are they're making mistakes, but they're learning very quickly and getting good very quickly. And
Yeah.
those are the ones that are winning.
Yeah, I mean, the industry itself can put you in a box, but a lot of these artists out here are putting themselves in one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, especially on an independent level, like, at some point, you've got to look yourself in the mirror and say, "Who do you wanna be in this world?" And I don't know, that's why I had that moment a long time ago, and I haven't looked back since. And if there is a ceiling, I'll fucking pound the door.
Make sure you subscribe to catch the second half of my interview with Brian Andrews, where we really get into what it takes in order to reveal your personality on social media in a consistent and effective way. I want to talk about how often do you actually post? And look, I have a lot of conversation with artists, and we talk about some heady stuff here. And I feel like sometimes they have the simplest questions, but even internally at a marketing company, we're always arguing. Like, I have broken an act on posting 4 times a week. I have posted a lot for an artist and also had lots of success. And I've done both and had little success. And I think it's always changing, but it's a frustrating thing because artists will do this thing where they're marketing, and they're like, I'm not doing enough of it, or am I doing too much, or am I annoying people? They start to second guess when things aren't working. And you can probably tell from the way I'm describing this, I ultimately feel like it kind of doesn't matter to a degree. But I have this argument with my creative director all the time, just this morning, where we're discussing it. And she, is even asking the question of like, how far in advance, how many pieces before the song drops. So I wanted to bring it up with you guys, get the brain trust, because I think this is an interesting topic just to kind of like rubber stamp this point in time. This is how we all feel about this. So feel free to jump in, whoever feels like they want to tackle that first.
Well, I could do the science of what I've studied. So for my members feed in my newsletter, I dissect the viral acts that are going viral. And one of the things I do is I count on average about how often they post and what they do. And the equation I give everybody is 3 times is the minimum. Now, let's remember, Mosseri actually said, we'll put you in the algorithm if you post 10 reels a month. So, like,
And
that's
we're
about
talking about Instagram.
well, I'm talking about Instagram and TikTok together because I see the same thing. So 3 times is the bare minimum. 5 to 7 is the average I see of groups that are blowing up. And 21 is the most I've ever seen where it's not like, like there's this rare case like Sophie Powers and Dexter and the Moon Rocks are the 2 groups I've seen post the most, and they were posting at times 3 times a day.
I also think to some extent there's the content you're posting matters and the way you're trying to communicate with people matters. But I have to be very careful when I say this because it's always like an I give an inch, you take a mile thing, right? Where I'm like, oh, well, like, if you're posting higher res reels or you're posting like large carousels combining a bunch of different things that happened over the past several days while on tour, like, yeah, you can get away with doing that and then not posting for 3 days, right? Or you can get away with 4 posts a week or whatever, but also realize that that means the minimum is really 3, and posting less than that, people really start to forget about you, right? And it's like, you need to find ways to maintain a routine like that.
Well, and if I'm an artist, I'm sitting here asking the question then like, okay, let's say I'm posting 7 times a week. It's nothing's working. And then and I'll give you an example. I'll go look at one artist who told me that and they're posting posting their music twice and then 5 times a week is bullshit. I think that's the other part of the equation where I'm like, why are you only talking about your music twice a week? Like, why are you only showcasing it? And it's like, well, I don't want to annoy people. I'm like, fucking A.
My opinion, like, you cannot annoy people on social media. Like, I think you
Yeah.
could post 10 times a day, and I'm not saying to post 10 times a day, but you could, and you're not going to annoy people because the algorithm might show them one of your posts. And Matt is giving us a crazy face right now because he literally posts 35 pieces of short form content a week on TikTok and Instagram.
Plus
probably
collabs
other
with the podcast
Yeah.
and 1 or 2 other things.
Because at some point can be kind of a numbers game, right? Like you're not pulling like 100,000 views in your TikToks or anything, but you look at them and it's like, okay, this one has 500, this one has 1,000, that was 700, but you did 35 of them in a week. So it's like the numbers on that is kind of crazy, and all those eyeballs, a percentage of them turn into people that comment, a percentage of people turn into people that follow, and that's how Matt Bacon has over 100,000 Instagram followers.
Just coming from like the mega content side of things. Very routinely, my friend, like I'll talk to people and they'll be like, "You post 5 times a day? I only see you like
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 times a week." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Like I'm glad you see me consistently, but like if I wasn't posting 35 times a week, maybe you'd only see me once every 2 weeks." And then I'd be not in the same position, you know? And it's like you said, Andrew, it is a numbers game and you can't be too annoying. And also the people who I want Jesse's thoughts here. But my belief has always been the people who find you annoying probably weren't going to be like genuine followers anyway. Right? It's like Sophie Powers posts a ton. She is great. I really like her. But she definitely does have like a very over the top e-girl personality.
Sophie
Uh
Powers is literally on crappy music this week as one of the top
yeah.
posts
Yeah.
because people hate her that much, whereas I
Yeah.
love some of her songs.
I think she's great, yeah. But what I'm saying is, like, the people who are unfollowing Sophie Powers were probably not looking for hyperpop e-girl music anyway.
So I think one of the things we have to always remember is that, like, yes, posting frequency matters, but low quality, quantity and quality are not just separate levers on the left-right graph. It is actually a quad graph, and quantity and quality do matter in how you interact with that stuff. And like, you could post once every 2 days and make it the most high quality post, and if it goes out to hundreds of thousands of people, it is a different thing. But one of the things I will say is there's a whole nother graph to this, which is what that kid Pacific proved, which is he posted, I'm not going to get this totally right, but around 1,100 times in 6 months. But like, it amounted to 2 million streams, which was not that much for the amount of effort, in my opinion. When you see a thing like Lady Radiator, who we covered a few weeks ago, when that was like less than 2 million and he had 200 million to get around the same amount of streams. Like, it's really crazy that the song and who you target and who sees it, and if it's in your demographic, really does matter in these instances.
Well, and I'll say this too, that people will get tired of a song, but if you combine it, if you sandwich it right with a variety of content, they will start to endear to the song in different ways. And, I had one artist that I did a shoot with, and we didn't have a whole lot of other content. And the first post we made from the shoot went bananas. And then everything after that just kind of nosedived. And then we did one from the studio and it went bananas. And so your sandwich, you're basically all the different types of content around that song, the bread, the lettuce, tomato, the meat. It's all a variety of the same thing. And you can also do that around messaging. There is multiple messages around a song that you can put, multiple hooks, give people a different avenue to interact with the song. That absolutely matters. And that's also why it's important. Jesse, you talked about Finsta accounts, fan accounts, having seeding content around the song and letting them seed in other places also adds to that sandwich. But yeah, if you go out and do one shoot and you just spam content from that one shoot, it's not even that it's bad that you're doing it. It just, the mileage is not going to go as far.
One of the reasons people are using covers.ai, Cache, and Floodify is that when you start to get served a song, and if you're interacting with it heavily, having more content there to have that, the reason people are making all this brain rot AI slop is that it increases the likelihood that they keep hearing that hook over and over again, and it's playing that numbers game, that because if you've engaged with other videos where Wario sings a song, and that it's before that they got your post where you're singing that song and it's the same sound, they go, well, they liked Wario last time, let's give them Wario singing that song, even though it's the biggest slop shit I've ever seen.
Kind of on the opposite side of that, honestly, is like you said earlier, Jesse, that quantity and quality are on a graph, and this is the other thing,
A quad graph,
right?
not a left-right graph, is what I want to
Yeah.
emphasize.
Yeah. But also, like, quality does not develop in a vacuum. Quality requires doing the thing a lot, right? Like, when I do my speaking events, I always talk about generally to start writing good songs, you have to get like 50 mediocre songs out of your system first when you're starting out, right? Like, no one gets good at posting on social by only posting on social once a month, generally speaking.
I don't know,
You don't
Jesse's
think
so
so?
Honestly,
skeptical.
Jesse's giving a lot of faces, but honestly, I agree with that
I
sentiment.
do too. I'm hear what Jesse has to say though.
I'll tell you guys what it is. It's the Dunning-Kruger graph. It's that there is a lot of time that you first have a lot of inspiration, and then you start to get in your way, and then you become real fucking dumb for a while, and then you finally get good again. But in all honesty, I think like one of the most interesting things is a lot of times people think like on TikTok, they're like, "Oh my god, I hit at first just because I was new and they were trying to incentivize me." And it's like, yeah, I believe that that phenomenon is real, but a lot of time too, when I'm going through on consulting calls with people's things, it's like, yeah, you had a few good ideas and then you got in your fucking way and started to judge yourself against all the other accounts you were watching after you got success, and you started making really dumb shit and be instead of being yourself, being someone else, and then you learned what to do and you learned the language of TikTok.
But you kind of learn that language through repetition. And granted, you don't have to post everything you film, right? You can film 100 things and throw out 80
Yep.
of them, so that way you have the best 20. But you figure out the language of TikTok, I think, by like posting and kind of as you're week by week, you're like, oh, like this isn't working, that is working numerically.
That's in the Dunning-Kruger, what are they, the plateau in the Dunning-Kruger graph?
The plateau of sustainability.
There we go.
I mean, I'll tell you part of the reason that I left my old agency was, they wanted to scale, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to scale, but you've got to kind of be really good at doing something over and over again and providing like consistent service. And what I found is that things change so frequently. How do you scale a creative agency if you can't change all the time and be creative, right? You have to change. And so this happens in the agency sphere where we're like sitting there and we're like, this works, this works, this works. Hey, how come nothing's working anymore? Well, this doesn't work anymore. Like we have to change everything now. We have to think about it differently. And it's interesting because when I first started doing a lot of content, I mean, I went out with Matt Mason. I took a video of him like kind of from his ass recording it. 4 million views that video did. Right? Like it was so bad. And I mean, Matt is an artist, so he was like, what the fuck is it? 4 million views. And he was like, believer. But then 2 years down the line, and I'm showing up with full production because that's what it is. Now I'm posting that stuff and I'm like, I posted a shitty video of somebody in the studio and that did 1 million. And I'm like, it sucks because it's like as soon as you're not aggressively doing it, there is no mastering. It's just a constant learning thing. And these artists like you said, they get in their own way because they get really good at something. I think, and truthfully, they hope they get big enough, quick enough that they don't have to worry about it, which is a thing, right? You can just post whatever. I remember Little Nas X went on and popped a pimple and that had like 17 million views, right? Like even Alex Warren, like look what Alex posts. It's pretty fun,
I'd rather
entertaining
not.
stuff. Yeah. But I'm just saying he can just do whatever and it gets like 20 million views. And
It's
so,
true.
Yeah.
but
Now, a
until
lot of
then, you
artists
got to
in
play the
general,
game.
like they look to huge artists for examples of what they should be doing because
Oh,
they're like,
yeah.
oh, well, they're successful. Clearly, what they're doing is correct, but there is like a certain level where it doesn't matter what they do anymore. Like Taylor Swift can drop 2 albums in the same week, and that's cool.
And they'll both
But like
break
if you
records.
see that as an indie artist, you're like stupid, right?
Yeah.
Or
Well, and it's, man, that's
misinformed.
the bane of my existence. Even artists that are on the come up that are doing really well, they want to immediately escape into that. The biggest thing I get is that when an artist is breaking in my vicinity and they're like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go Mystique now. I'm like, don't change your brand values. That's the thing that people don't understand is like if you grow in your brand and you blow up, your brand values can't change because you're gonna alienate everybody. To me, that's the biggest thing about all of this, though, is that however much you post, the consistency of what you provide value wise, that's really the thing that needs to connect the dots. Because if you can connect those things and you're constantly giving people something they love and enjoy and it's not alienating them, then it's not going to annoy them. That's the thing. It's like, how do I not annoy people? Well, you be valuable. Do people find, like, I only find hamburgers annoying when I'm not hungry. So if you're satiating my hunger, then I'm good. And most of the time, if you're on TikTok and you're giving people something they don't want, then yeah, it's going to annoy them. Sorry, that was a real weird left turn analogy.
I was there with you. I bike to go get hamburgers every weekend. I mean,
Yeah, dude, it's dinner time. I'm getting hungry. I'm like, I want a hamburger.
I'm thinking
Like,
about going to Hamburger America
platform-
after this.
The platforms very well understand like your threshold for annoyance, right? They know exactly how many ads to show you before you close the app. And they also know like how much can we show you this creator before you're going to think it's annoying. And so if you kind of think about that, you realize it's basically impossible to be annoying. And then you
True.
just need to like find your line of like, where can I make the most amount of content that I can sustain over a 6 to 12-month period of time without having it suck? And if that's 2 posts a week, like then do it. It's better to do 2 posts a week for a year than it is to do a post every day for 3 months and then quit, you know?
I do want to say, Matt, your content does annoy me. No. Like this cigar, motherfucker. No, I actually watch all of it. I'm like, oh, here's Matt, and I watch it, and I'm like, son of a bitch, how does he do it?
I think I
All I
only
do
see
is-
like at most 1 post a day of yours, Matt.
That's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying
Yeah.
is that like you guys are like my real actual friends, and we're in
And
like
we still
the
only
exact
see one a day.
yeah, we're in the
Yeah.
exact same space, and you still only see me 1 time a day, and I'm
Mhm.
posting 5 times a day. That's kind of fascinating, and it also I
Yeah.
think, and obviously like your own viewing habits, yada yada yada. I'm sure if you liked and commented on every single one, like you would see more. But like, what I'm trying to say is like that's really like important, a very helpful and anecdote I think for people to understand like your fucking
Yeah.
friends who you talk
We
to
follow each other
and get
and we
tagged
DM
and
each
shit
other.
with,
And get tagged and shit with, and we still only see
and
each
you
other's
and you
direct
still
messages.
only see a small portion of it.
I'll pile on to this is that one of the most common things I'm doing is, so when I do those dissections of artists, I am often following them for months. And then when I click on their page to finally do the dissection after I've gotten interested enough to go, this is who I'm going to do, time to go deep dive, I go, holy shit, I miss so much of this, yet I've logged on every day and followed them.
This is also what frustrates me when I do shoots. I cannot stand doing shoots with artists that I don't have control over their posting, because I will do shoots with like 20 amazing pieces of content, and they go, how many should I post? All of them. Like, what are you talking about? Like all 20 of them. That's a lot. I'm like, it is. Post them all.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. We're trying to get this to go as far as it can. So please start a conversation with a musician friend by sending it to them.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our episodes out every Tuesday. If you can rate us on Apple and Spotify, it helps us so much. Tune in next week for more.